Hi science students, today we're broadcasting from my living room and I'd like to introduce you to my two children here, Felix and Hazel. Say hi guys.
Hi.
Alright, every parent loves their children unconditionally, but it still fills my heart with sadness and disappointment every time I look at them. Now so far we've learned that half of a person's genes come from the mother and half come from their father. So in these guys' case, half of their genes came from me and half came from their mother. It is impossible for me to look at these two without seeing some of the genes they've inherited from their mother. And while every parent would do anything they could for their children, it just brings such sadness to my heart knowing that I could not give them more of my superior genes, that they had to get half of their genes from their mother, which essentially can be thought of as diluting perfection. Now, kids, if you had the chance, would you be exactly like Daddy? Would you want to be exactly like Daddy?
Yeah.
See? They know what they're talking about. Felix, do you want to be exactly like Daddy? Would you want to be exactly like me?
Yeah.
See? And Mother Nature has cheated them of this opportunity. Why, Mother Nature? Why? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen how Mother Nature is cruel and how she requires humans to go through sexual reproduction as opposed to asexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, we get a mixing of the genes, and in asexual reproduction, we have one organism splitting to become two genetically identical copies of one another. Now, I've invited some friends here who are experts on this matter to discuss this topic of cloning, because that's essentially what's going on. Gentlemen, come on out. Hey, how you doing? Hey, thanks for having us. Have a good look at that. All right. So the first myth about cloning is that cloning isn't natural. Yeah, exactly. Strawberries, onions, potatoes, blades of grass, all reproduce through cloning. And it's not just plants. Bacteria go through mitosis, as we've talked about, splitting one into two identical daughter cells. That's cloning. That's right, and identical twins. Identical twins are essentially clones. They may be different genetically from the parent because they're still getting genes from the mother and the father. However, they're almost genetically identical to each other, which essentially makes them clones of one another. So cloning is a natural process. Second myth about cloning is that cloning is only something that's recently been done by humans, as scientific discoveries have led us to have the technology to be able to do so. That's right. In fact, the word or term clone is based on the Greek word clone, clone with a K. And that's the word that means twig or cutting that they would use to grow and put into the soil and generate a new plant. Okay, so they've been cloning, or humans have been cloning organisms for thousands and thousands of years. So this isn't something that's new. The third myth is that all cloning is trying to produce a new organism. That's right. In fact, there are three types of cloning. The first type that we'll talk about, though, is reproductive cloning. And in reproductive cloning, the goal is to produce an exact copy of the original organism. So that's kind of what you think of when you're talking about cloning. The second type of cloning is therapeutic cloning. The goal of therapeutic cloning is not to create a new organism, but rather new cells. And these cells will be used to help people with medical conditions. Yeah, and here we're talking about copying cells, not entire organisms. Big difference. The last type of cloning is gene cloning, or sometimes called DNA cloning. Yeah, and it's the type that we'll actually talk about the least. That's right, so what's going on here, we're really replicating just segments of the DNA, or copying the genes. Okay, so we're not copying full organisms, just pieces of the DNA. So that's gene cloning, or DNA cloning. Okay, now we're going to give you some terminology, or introduce you to some terminology that's necessary for any discussion on cloning. Yeah, the first term that we're going to introduce you to is stem cell. Now what a stem cell is an undifferentiated cell, which means it hasn't become specialized yet, and it can become any type of cell through the process of mitosis. Yeah, the cool thing about stem cells is they're what we call pluripotent, which means they can become any type of cell. So that cell can be any type of thing, which is really useful. Now the second term we're going to introduce to you is embryo. Yeah, so what an embryo is an egg cell that has been successfully fertilized by a sperm cell. So it has full 46 chromosomes, and an embryo can be classified as to a mass of cells prior to the 8th week of pregnancy. One thing to note, that with humans, if you remove that embryo out of the uterus, it is not going to develop into another human. It cannot survive outside of the uterus, no matter what you do. Yeah, we're going to try to set the stage for tomorrow's class discussion on cloning by going over each of the different types again. Yeah, one thing to note is that the scientific community is not for pursuing all of these types of cloning. Alright, the first type of cloning we're going to talk about, again, is DNA cloning. Now, DNA cloning is common practice. It really is. In fact, it happens every day across the country in science labs. And we're probably not going to talk a lot about DNA cloning, but it's important for you to know that there is another type of cloning out there. The second type of cloning is reproductive cloning. And it's the type of cloning you think of when you hear that term cloning. Yeah, we've cloned lots of different types of things. Many different types of plants, including carrots and grapes. Yeah, we've cloned lots of animals as well. We've cloned things like fruit flies, and frogs, and bigger things like cats and dogs, and of course, sheep. That's right. However, the scientific community is not in favor of trying to reproductively clone humans. And to this date, there has never been a human cloned. The last type of cloning, therapeutic cloning, is one that the scientific community and medical community is really excited about. Yeah, and therapeutic cloning holds the potential to help people with all sorts of medical conditions, from spinal cord injuries to diabetes. Yeah, and disorders like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, which are hereditary in nature, which means they're passed on through your genes. Now, one of my grandmothers died from Parkinson's, the other is living with Alzheimer's disease, probably will die from Alzheimer's disease in the next few years. That means that those diseases or those disorders, I potentially carry those genes and have passed those genes on to my children. Well, hopefully that sets the stage for tomorrow's conversation. Thanks for coming out, guys. It was a lot of fun having you here, and hopefully you handsome gentlemen can come back again sometime soon. All right, take care, science students. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us. It's been fun. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, where are you? This isn't funny anymore. Why do you always have to do this? Oh, I hate those guys.